On April 28, 2017, Kelvin Lyles of Atlanta, Georgia was sentenced to 3 years and 10 months in federal prison. Lyles pleaded guilty to using so-called synthetic identities to steal thousands of dollars. In December 2015, law enforcement executed a search warrant at Lyles' residence and discovered information for over 300 synthetic identities, fake driver's licenses, fake social security cards, and numerous credit cards held in the names of individuals other than Lyles. In total, Lyles attempted over $435,000 in fraudulent credit card transactions and succeeded in obtaining approximately $350,000. December 8, 2021, a leader in a synthetic identity fraud scheme was sentenced to prison for bank fraud. Michael Griffin of Knightdale, North Carolina was sentenced to 100 months in prison. Griffin led an organized scheme to use stolen and synthetic identities to defraud numerous banks. The indictment charged that various defendants, many of whom were family, conspired with Griffin to defraud Synchrony Bank, a Lowe's credit card provider, by opening credit accounts in the name of fraudulent identities, cashing out the accounts through prepaid card purchases, and then defaulting on the credit accounts. Griffin was held accountable under the Advisory United States Sentencing Guidelines for intended losses and fraudulent gains of more than $3.4 million. He was also ordered to make restitution for identifiable losses totaling over $400,000. And then we have Tiffany Dawn Russell of North Carolina. On January 20th, 2022, she pled guilty to participating in an extensive multi-year conspiracy to obtain over $2.5 million from at least 12 financial institutions and the United States Small Business Administration. According to the indictment, Russell and her co-conspirators applied for loans and credit cards using Social Security numbers that were not issued to them by the Social Security Administration. By doing so, they created new credit profiles or synthetic identities for themselves to open financial accounts and make purchases from retailers without any intention of paying for the items and services obtained. U.S. Attorney Michael Easley stated, "This case is also a reminder that it is illegal to defraud banks using so-called credit profile numbers, credit privacy numbers, or credit protection numbers, CPNs, or other tricks. It's a federal crime with the potential to yield years in federal prison." Russell is scheduled to be sentenced in April and was charged with using a synthetic identity to purchase a BMW and to obtain credit which she used to pay for her 2016 butt augmentation surgery. Now that's what I call building assets. As part of her plea agreement, she consented to forfeiture over $2 million to the United States. You know what? I wonder, when she's sentenced, will she have to return that booty? Now, in all seriousness, a major challenge fraudsters face every day is pulling off fraud while remaining anonymous and keeping themselves as separated as possible from the crime. Well, now there's a method that's been on the rise that's allowing fraudsters to work around this, and it has also allowed them to cash out billions, all while remaining nearly completely off the radar. And that method is called synthetic identity fraud. Identity theft is one of the most common crimes, and it happens to 1 in 20 Americans. Imagine trying to log into your email account one day only to see that your password has been changed. Then you start getting notifications of activity on your bank and credit cards and your crypto accounts. That's when the feelings of panic, fear, anxiety, anger, and disbelief start to set in. This is why I'm excited to partner with Aura, who's sponsoring this video. Aura is identity theft protection and insurance, fraud monitoring, a VPN, password management, and antivirus software, all combined into one easy-to-use app. One of my favorite features of Aura is how it monitors the dark web for your emails, passwords, and social security numbers and will alert you within 24 hours if they're ever exposed. When it comes to fraud, every second matters. You could connect your credit and bank accounts and get notified of any changes up to 4 times faster than Aura's competitors. Their VPN allows you to stay anonymous online by keeping your browsing history and personal information safe and encrypted. Their antivirus software will block malware and viruses before they infect your devices. Should your identity ever be compromised, all plans come with $1 million in identity theft insurance and access to an experienced, US-based customer service team to help you resolve any incidents. Protect you and your family from America's #1 crime. Try Aura free for 2 weeks and see if you or any of your family's personal information has been compromised. Start your free trial today at aura.com/IGM. Alright? What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Infamous Ghost Money, and I need y'all to watch this video to understand how this dangerous method works and how to defend against it. To put it plainly, synthetic identity fraud is a form of identity theft that fraudsters use, which involves combining stolen personal information, specifically a social security number, with other fake information to create an entirely brand spanking new consumer profile that fraud schemes can be ran through. This method is preferred by many fraudsters because, if done correctly, it could be extremely difficult to track and it could lead to easily cashing out thousands to millions of dollars. Now, synthetic identity fraud began to have its come up back in 2011 when the Social Security Administration decided to begin randomizing social security numbers. You see, at the time, the administration felt this change would help defend against identity theft, since prior to randomizing social security numbers, fraudsters had pretty much figured out how to manipulate the number issuing system, which involved 3 components: area, group, and serial number. And these components were used to confirm if an individual's social was actually legitly issued to that person. So with this change, it essentially meant every social security number issued after that point was randomized, which, unknown to the Social Security Administration at the time, made it that much easier for criminals to pull off identity theft, which would eventually evolve into synthetic identity fraud. So with that being said, the first step a fraudster takes in pulling off synthetic identity fraud is getting their hands on one of these social security numbers that was issued after 2011 or from an individual who has little to no credit history. As mentioned in many of my other videos, this could easily be obtained through the dark web, insiders, phishing, or any of the other methods fraudsters use to steal information nowadays. This social security number is extremely important since it will be the foundation that this synthetic identity fraud scheme will be built on. Now, the next step in the method is when the fraudster goes into create a player mode, straight up, since all the other aspects of this profile will be made up, such as the name and the date of birth. Other essential information such as the address can be replaced with a purchased mailbox or using an abandoned property as a form of a drop address. And burner phones can be used as a telephone number for this brand new profile. Pretty much all the information that you would need to complete a credit card application can be created out of thin air outside of that precious social security number. Now, once all this basic information is obtained, the next step is to tri-merge the profile. Tri-merging is the act of getting this new credit profile into the 3 major credit bureau systems: TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Now, this is pretty simple to complete. This is done by submitting a credit card application with this new profile that will hit all 3 agencies with the intention of it getting unapproved. You see, the fraudster could care less about getting approved for this application because this is the step that is needed to bring the profile to life, so to say. You see, synthetic identity fraud exposes a major loophole in the way the Social Security Administration and the credit bureaus work in tracking an individual's credit history. The Social Security Administration doesn't communicate directly with the credit bureaus, and with the randomization of social security numbers, there's no concrete way to determine whether this information associated with the social that's used is legit. And you combine that with the fact that most credit card application processes are automated, all that will happen is the application will be immediately unapproved. Because from the perspective of the credit card issuer, the fraud application simply comes across as an individual who has no credit. Now, once the application is denied, this fake name will now be associated to this social security number in the eyes of the credit bureaus, and this application will come up as an inquiry on the credit profile. And just like that, the fraudster has successfully created the foundation of this synthetic identity. The next step the fraudster takes is all around further building out the fake identity in the real world, as well as building the profile's credit score. This process could take a couple weeks or even several months. Fake IDs will be created and used in the real world to sign up for services to further legitimize this fake identity. Also, fabricated payroll documents and utility statements can be created and associated with the profile as well. And finally, online profiles and social media accounts will be created for this fictitious identity to really make it appear as if it's a real person. Building the credit score is the most important factor in successfully pulling off the synthetic identity fraud scheme, since this will allow the fraudster to eventually be approved for large amounts of credit that, as you can tell from earlier cases, they have no intentions on paying back. The first method synthetic identity fraudsters use to build credit is known as piggybacking, which is when they add a synthetic identity fraudster's profile to an authorized user of another credit profile that has strong and established credit and a very good credit score. By doing this for a couple months, the synthetic profile will begin to reap the benefits from this connection and the score of the profile will begin to climb. Another common method used in conjunction to piggybacking is setting up a secured credit card. By putting down a minimal amount of money, the fraudster will now have a small credit limit, which will allow them to make small purchases and payments for several months to further build the credit history of the synthetic profile as a good paying individual. This part of the scheme is critical, and the longer the synthetic profile is cooked up, the stronger and more realistic it starts to become. Once the credit score of the profile is in the 700 plus range, that is when the profile will be primed for use to pull off all sorts of fraud schemes. And best of all, when the scheme is eventually exhausted, the fraudster can simply let the synthetic identity take the fall while they wash their hands and separate themselves with the crime. And it's hard to tell just how much money is lost annually to synthetic identity fraud, since many institutions that fall victim to these schemes commonly miscategorize these losses as customers who defaulted on loans, not realizing that these customers are 100% fictitious. Based on my research, individuals most vulnerable to synthetic identity fraud are minors, non-US residents, and individuals who have little to no credit history, such as elderly people or even prison inmates. According to the CFPB, nearly 22% of the US population can be considered credit invisible, which means they haven't generated enough credit data with the credit bureaus to generate a credit report. All these individuals are ideal targets for synthetic identity fraud. So when it comes to defending against this fraud method, the best things to do are, first, regularly check your credit report at least on an annual basis. You can make use of any of the credit tracking apps out there that gives you live updates whenever changes are picked up on your credit report. And when it comes to your children, parents can request a copy of their kids' credit reports by contacting the credit bureaus directly. I highly recommend doing this from time to time just to ensure you could catch anything going on early with your kid's credit before it goes too far. Also, if your child is over the age of 13, a credit report can be requested from all 3 credit bureaus once a year from the website annualcreditreport.com. This website is federally approved and a safe method to get your credit report for yourself or your children aged 13 to 17 for free once a year. The same thing should be done for elderly people in your life who do not actively use credit. Now I get it, even if grandma and grandpa don't believe in credit cards, it's still a good idea to have them set up for credit monitoring, since elderly people are usually targeted for phishing scams, which increases the chances that their information could be floating out there somewhere. And finally, the same applies for non-residents who are given individual tax ID numbers or I-10 numbers. If you suspect anything weird is going on with your identity, you should immediately contact the 3 credit bureaus and request a copy of your reports to make sure your identity isn't being used by someone else. Synthetic identities may make fraudsters feel invincible, but don't get it twisted. Synthetic identity fraudsters get caught regularly, and the FBI is all the way onto this method and how to track it down. So to all the fraudsters out there, try it if you dare. But I hope you're ready to spend a couple of years in federal prison. Or hopefully you can learn from the mistakes of Kelvin, Michael, and of course, Big Booty Tiffany mentioned at the start of the video. Fast and free money is always so wonderful until you get caught. So that's the video on synthetic identity fraud. As always, I hope you found some value in the video. If you did, remember to hit that like button and also let me know what you think of this fraud method, or if you or anyone you ever known of has ever been a victim of this method. I would love to hear about it in the comments. Alright, so with that being said, peace.